Hello folks, and a warm welcome. You're tuned in to my meditation, the Outdoors series. My name's Guy Cross, and I'll be introducing you to some interesting people with some interesting ways of using the outdoors to help sustain a healthy frame of mind. With being an outdoor lover myself, and using the outdoors to take care of my own mental health, I've always been curious as to how other people use outdoor hobbies and activities to take care of themselves, and that curiosity led me to the birth of this podcast series. My guests will talk about their favourite outdoor hobby, and we'll go into depth of how it helps them find peace of mind. Hopefully one of, if not many of the hobbies within this series will help you, or at the very least inspire you. And that's the whole aim of these podcasts, to fill you with ideas that maybe you hadn't thought of before, and to hear some positive, encouraging, real-life stories from my guests. Sometimes, hearing someone else's perspective on a hobby or activity gives you a fresh new way of looking at it, which can't be a bad thing, right? So without further ado, let's meet this week's guest. Hello everybody, and welcome to this week's podcast. So I'm sat here with Bella Somerset today. She's a mountain leader, a yoga teacher and a health coach. She lives in South Gloucestershire and has done all of her life. She's the founder of Bella's Magic Mountains, which was born in 2017, and she's also the co-founder of a new project called Summercell, which began in July 2020, which we'll talk about in a bit. So hello Bella, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
No problem, thanks for your time. So when did you get into the outdoors and how? That's the first question I've got for you.
Well, growing up in the countryside, it's always been a big part of my life. Like, we were never really able to watch or allowed to watch TV, and so always outside playing sports. And I think I became aware of how important getting into the outdoors was when I kind of withdrew from the outdoors. So I had an eating disorder that kicked off when I was about 16, and I'd always played a lot of sports in that before that, and then I kind of became less interested in that and started drinking a bit too much and behaving in a very unbalanced way with food. And I think where really sort of light bulb moment where I realized how nourishing the outdoors was for me was when I did a 3-week trek across the north of Costa Rica. And just that sense of peace that I got on that adventure just gave me that sort of knowing that that's just a healing space for me wherever I am. Yeah.
And how long ago was that?
So that was when I was 18, and I'm now 29, so I suppose 11 years ago.
Yeah. So that was just the beginning of when you started getting back into the outdoors. Was that the kind of the nudge that gave you to continue to what you're doing now?
Yeah, I think it really made me enchanted by trekking, and like the idea of being immersed in the outdoors with very little. You're just literally living out of a backpack with very basics, but you're with a group of people. And I think the very sort of value of trekking being in the sense that you don't need anything, and you don't really have enough energy to sort of wear a social mask like we do when we're being social in England. Like, you know, you drink to put yourself in a social mode so that you can perform in a way. And then so you form these very effortless friendships, and I'm still friends with those people to this day from that trek I did 11 years ago.
Yeah. And
I think it became a little bit of a solution with me, the sort of nature immersion, but also the connection that happens on these treks as a sort of, whenever I was finding life incredibly challenging, it was always there.
Yeah, like a good backup for your mental health, basically, for your mental wellness.
Yeah, it's definitely a different form of it. Like, I'm aware of how important nature is to have in my life, but I think when life is clouding over, to know that I can slightly do an escapism and really get that reset. But it's the stillness, it's the pace of nature. It's like there's no distractions, especially when we're in the north of Costa Rica, or if you're in the Himalayas.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, where I kind of feel like when we do our treks in the Pyrenees and the Lake District, the fact that there is access to 3G or 4G, it means that there's a sort of element that you don't really get bored. You don't allow yourself that time of sort of like low, and you know, in life there is highs, there's lows, but there's a sort of relay, and you know, climbing up a mountain isn't necessarily like enjoyable in the moment, but the euphoria that you get when you're at the top of that mountain looking over the beauty of where you are, and the appreciation that you have that the world is the way the world is.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? It's amazing. It really is. And just going back to you mentioned before in your younger years, you used to be into the outdoors and stuff, and you were very, you know, you weren't watching TV and things. What interests and hobbies did you have back then?
I played a lot of sports. So I was really into hockey, tennis, netball, and then just running. And being athletic was sort of very important to me when I was younger.
Yeah.
And riding. I think living in the countryside and riding meant that you got to see so much more of the countryside. And my mum would always quiz us on like what certain trees were called. And
oh, really?
yeah. So I always felt like I was really knowledgeable about the countryside. But now we do walks with like a specialist for our retreats, and like learning about like the mycelial web and the interconnectedness of everything and the symbiotic relationship that all plants have. Yeah. It amazes me how complex it all is and how little we really know and appreciate. Yeah.
And I did a little bit of nosying around regarding you actually, and I've seen where exactly you're from, and it's a beautiful part of the world. You're actually not far from where I work.
Oh really? Where are you working?
I actually work in Trowbridge at the moment.
Okay.
So it's a little bit further south than you, but yeah, you live in a beautiful part of the world. It's yeah.
Yeah, we've got a deer park very nearby, so it's really, that's where we do our runs through.
Oh, really? And there's plenty of deer in there?
Yeah, there's loads of deer.
Wow.
Just nice to not have to run on a road the whole way. But even though it's like, it is actually roaded, but it's, you know, really feel like in the wild. It's quite nice.
Yeah. Yeah, no, how big is that park? I guess it's a fair size.
Yeah, it's pretty big. I wouldn't know the total size, but I couldn't compare it. I'd say it's about the same size as Hyde Park.
Yeah,
that's not really.
It's big enough to run around and see some deer. Let's put it that way.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, cool. And so, just moving on a little. What do you use as your meditation now? What's your like go-to activity outdoors to maintain your your mind in a peaceful state and that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, I think obviously life in the mountains isn't really consistent. That's more of a sort of escapism and something to look forward to. So in a sort of day-to-day when we're working, like I run every day and allowing 2 rest days a week. And I'm actually, through this winter lockdown, we started doing a half marathon training from the first day of lockdown. Yep. And so we're doing that in 3 weeks' time.
Okay.
And actually, I'm so glad that we've done it, because on those really miserable cold days, it's forced us outside, and we've like those freezing days, we're in the balaclava, we're in like triple layers, but you feel great at the end of it, and you feel like I feel like I'm achieving something. And with our work being slightly on pause, because it's obviously, we host connecting experiences, getting the online, offline. Yeah. So it's not the great time to be in that sort of business, but I think people see the value of connection and how a cyber connection is just not a replacement for it.
Yeah.
So in a way that space in well-being is only going to become stronger.
Yeah. And like you said then, what you just said about getting out into the outdoors when it's, the weather isn't too great, and a lot of people kind of get put off, don't they, by, they'll see a couple of clouds in the sky and they'll think, no, I'll leave it for today. But like you said, after you've done it, you just feel so good, don't you? It just makes you feel so, you've earned that dinner when you get home, you've earned that nice hot shower.
Definitely.
It's just such a nice feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's definitely like being forced to get out in these times is really helpful, because you see a bit of rain, you're like, oh, it looks horrible. And actually, if you've got the right gear, it really doesn't matter, but you do need a good waterproof, and you do need, especially if you're going into the mountains, you need to know how to dress for the mountains.
Absolutely. And that makes it more enjoyable as well, doesn't it,
Yeah, I mean, the weather can definitely change the enjoyment level. I think because I did my Duke of Edinburgh Gold when I was at school, and not gold, sorry, bronze. And I really didn't enjoy it because I just didn't have the right gear, and it kind of put me off hiking in England.
Yeah.
for a long time after I was enchanted by hiking. I just felt like I had to find nice weather.
Yeah.
And it was only sort of through my work that people wanted to do these UK adventures, and I became enchanted by the Lake District and the Jurassic Coast. And really that how beautiful the UK is. Snowdonia in particular, actually, that national park, like amazing.
My backyard, funnily enough.
Yeah, I know, lucky you.
Yeah, you'll have to come down and visit one day. You'll have to show me your mountaineering skills. We'll move on to that actually, because you've touched on it a little bit. Your ventures, your Bella's Magic Mountains and Summer Cecil. Do you want to explain a little bit to the listeners about them?
Yes. So I started Bella's Magic Mountains 4 years ago, and we initially started doing treks in Nepal, which were 2 or 3 weeks long. And obviously everybody's limited on time. And as much as they were very affordable experiences, like taking 3 weeks holiday or 2 weeks holiday, that's a big chunk of what you've got.
Yeah.
So then we kind of set up 1 week adventures in the Pyrenees. And now we do 3-day adventures in the Lake District and the Jurassic Coast. And I now have a business partner, which again has been such a healing part for me, because working in wellbeing when you're hustling behind a laptop in London and you kind of like trying to promote these sort of wellbeing experiences, but you finding that it's just not, I didn't feel connected to nature. I didn't feel connected to myself, didn't feel connected to other people on this journey with me. And I just felt a bit of an imposter working in the wellbeing space. And now having someone to share those overwhelms with and challenges and sort of have a bit more of a roadmap and accountability to getting stuff done. And that's, I suppose, Summer Cecil is like my business partner's surname. She's called Gabby Cecil and I'm Somerset.
I've researched this.
Yeah, so it is kind of like a perfect team. She's one of my best mates, and she was definitely one of my closest friends before, but now we're only even closer. I just feel so grateful that I've met someone who we are so aligned. And like,
yeah.
I think when you go into business with someone, you've got to have that sense of trust that that they're a trustful, good person, because there'll be challenges when an illusion will deceive you. And actually you've got to know that that's like a delusion rather than just a miscommunication or something.
Yeah. Letting your mind kind of take a hold and get the wrong idea, basically.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. Yeah, so she's your partner that's for Summer Cecil, isn't it? The Bella's Magic Mountains is your own thing.
Yeah, we're trying to weave them under the same umbrella, but she's a lot more savvy with like business and more professional language. So when we send emails now, quite often she has to sort of like, make sure that I'm not being too blunt or something. But I suppose I offer the more I've got all the trades in the space, where she's got all the sort of growth strategies. So she's more of the engine behind the growth. And yeah, we're enjoying the journey. So even though we haven't been able to work since October, it's just laying the foundation for the future. Yeah. And I couldn't think of a better person to be doing it with.
Yeah. And I guess it's just using this time wisely, isn't it? Like you say, it's not the best time for kind of outdoors activities and stuff, but I guess it gives you time, like me with this podcast, it's quite a new thing for me. So it's given me time to set it up and to get the kind of technical side things done. And it's just making the most of the time we've got at the moment, isn't it? To set these things up ready for when we can get going again.
Definitely. Like all those foundational things in a business that one takes shortcuts with at the beginning, we've kind of really honed down on those. So it's good. I think also the sort of silver lining for me with lockdown is I kind of find myself doing too many things at once and like draining my energy, whereas actually being sort of more nestled in one place and really like being okay and learning how to ride those waves of up and down and knowing that feeling will pass. Like, being someone who I hope to help people with their well-being and especially if they've struggled with an eating disorder. Yeah. I suppose I feel so much more confident in myself that like I'm not well because my life is staged with a series of retreat. I've had to be here now for a year. Yeah. And it's been good. I did manage to get away a couple of times with like holidays, but those were lucky sort of windows.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess you've felt appreciative of them. Like myself, I had a couple of breaks last year, and it just makes you feel so good, doesn't it, to get away from this whole situation, which I'm not going to go into because these podcasts aren't about that. But yeah, it's been pretty challenging here in the UK, hasn't it? The last year, we must say that. So, but you just touched then on your you said you had an eating disorder. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit and kind of explain what happened there and kind of how you got yourself out of that.
Yeah. So when I was 17, I really took a bad turn. I kind of felt like I started behaving in certain ways around food that I felt like I had under control, and it was a tricky time. You know, they have exam stress, your body's changing, and I didn't want my body to change in a physical way, but just as you go through your teen years, it does. And I was drinking too much. I was taking ecstasy, and I was on these extreme diets that meant that I would not eat for 3 days and then binge for 3 days.
Right.
And then I kind of felt that was how, and then I tried to, I would take Pro Plus to work at night for the exam stress, and then I'd get up early to go on a really long run because I didn't know how fundamental sleep is for good mental health. Like, I think above all else, getting good sleep, I think with people who shave their sleep to sort of work on something else I think that's bad advice. And I think like Russell Foster, who's a big leading thinker in the sleep neuroscience, he says that bad sleep or interrupt sleep is a precursor to bad mental health problems, no matter what it is. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of my eating sort of kicked off then, and it kind of went through really sort of big binges, and where I'd gain a lot of weight. So towards the end of school, I put on 2 stone, which is about 14 kilos. And I felt my sense of worth was in my body, and I felt that I just had no confidence after that. And I think there's so much in social media and Hollywood and advertising that tells you that you are lovable at a certain size.
Yeah.
And it's definitely taken me a lot to sort of scrape away a bit of those beliefs. Like I would love to not have sort of even like a microcosm of those beliefs, but they're still slightly there. Mm-hmm. And, you know, obviously it's important to look after your health, but I mean, I have a friend who's been to rehab for all of this stuff, and she's probably got a bit more of a healthy attitude. When she sees someone who's in a super good shape, like a sort of supermodel, her first thought is that person is a sick person. And if you think about how much time and energy we waste to often look a certain size, when actually it doesn't matter to be an extra 10 pounds lighter than your body naturally wants to be.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Like you say, you know, it's about keeping your body healthy, isn't it, rather than the external image of the look. Yeah. So I basically had a sort of 7-year, I suppose, up and down yo-yo with that, and each time kind of getting a bit worse. And then in that time, going away hiking was very much a part of my reset and realign, clear my head. And then, you know, I'd have like a new idea, like I'll try and be a teacher, and then I'll come back and I'll try and I just won't like it. Or, okay, maybe I want to start a cafe, and it gave me a sort of sense of peace of mind for those 2 months while I was away in the mountains. And it gave me that physical realignment that I so craved, because I felt so inadequate in a way, and which is a totally limiting belief. But then, it was only really in January 2016 when, at that point, I was binge eating, chain smoking. I'd become overweight on my BMI, and I just really didn't know what I was doing. And I felt like such an expert in the field of nutrition because I'd tried all the diets, I'd read all the books. And that's the thing about these diets, is they project so much sort of misinformation, which, like, of course, if you don't eat carbs and you limit your calories, you will lose weight. But is that what gives you a healthy brain feed of energy? Is that what allows your personality to thrive? Yeah.
So, and then sort of training as a holistic health coach from that time, because I was so powerless, it kind of allowed me to surrender everything I felt I knew. And it really taught me that well-being doesn't come from the food you eat. It comes from how you live your life. So it's sort of your career satisfaction, your relationships, your spiritual connection, and your physical activity.
Yeah.
And when you feel aligned in those things, you make healthy choices. And yeah, so that was like, and so then I started doing the health coaching on the treks when I had this idea, so in that time I went away hiking again to get that peace of mind and that, realignment. And I then had this idea to sort of fuse the trekking with the coaching, because I didn't feel my integrity to take on a coach in London, say like, oh, well, you just need to move more and eat less and, boost your relationships, when I kind of always found healing in the mountains.
Yeah.
But it's definitely like eating disorder recovery is not a linear journey. And that was definitely a turning point for me. And in the time since then, I'm now a part of a recovery community, and it's a 12-step fellowship. So it's changed my life. Like, there's no way I could have done this last year, like being grounded rather than being able to like stage the year with working retreats without this community. And it's a free community of people who are addicts. So for me, it's around food, but if you have it around alcohol or drugs, or, there's even ones for gaming and sex and like codependency.
Yeah.
So it almost gives me gratitude to having found that, because it gives you tools to manage life. So now when I feel like resentments are sort of clouding over my life, there is actually a tool to show me what my resentments that I feel towards someone else, and really how it's just sort of scraped the surface on fears that I have in myself. So it's a really powerful tool.
Yeah. So I guess you've used hiking kind of many times to get yourself out of kind of low situations.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's your medicine, basically. It's your meditation to keep your mind nice and peaceful. And yeah, and you like I say before, you live in a very good place for that as well, because it's kind of like a very peaceful area as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, hiking, I would say, if I'm on a point-to-point trekking adventure, that's like the mecca of peace in my mind. Like, that is really what just gives me that greatest sense of joy and experience of life. Like, that is the greatest privilege I've experienced, like hiking in the Himalayas. But I think that we obviously all have to learn to live in our lives. We have to learn to live with challenges that, like, whether it's people around us or work challenges.
Yeah.
Life is not all like great. And I suppose I know that's kind of crossing over into your indoor stuff, but you've got to have things to go to in all times. Like living in the mountains wouldn't really be possible.
Yeah.
Because we've all got to be responsible at times. And I suppose on those point-to-point trekking adventures with no Wi-Fi and just living out of a backpack, you have very little responsibility and just total freedom. And I think that's the most joyful moments I think I've felt in my life.
Yeah. I'm yet to get to the Himalayas. That's somewhere I definitely need to go.
Yeah, no, I mean, my best treks there, I would say the Annapurna circuit is one of my faves. I've met some amazing people on that. And then the Mardi Himal trek. But it's so much of it is about the people you meet as well. Like, I've done trekking.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. I've done trekking in the Pyrenees, and partly because I just needed a reset, and I don't speak French. So I'd go and I'd get a reset, but I didn't so much find joy in the experience.
No, that's really cool. It's always been a place that I've wanted to go hiking, but never have done. I'll have to pick your brains on some of the treks that you've done, some of the routes you've taken and things like that.
Yeah, no, there's great ones out there.
Yeah, I bet there is. So why would you recommend your specific activity to other people?
I feel that happiness is peace. So I feel like when I was 17, I felt happiness was wild joy and parties and reputation and all that stuff. Whereas now it's kind of feeling more content in oneself. And, I think a lot of that is achieved through perspective. So like however you measure yourself is whether you'll live with more peace or not. But I just think that it comes effortlessly when you're on a point-to-point trekking adventure with friends.
Yeah.
And it just does give you that perspective on life as well. So you get your time to your thoughts, and you can like think about what's nourishing for you and what's not. And then you can kind of take steps back home, whether you want to continue doing that or surrounding yourself with those people. And you meet amazing people as well. So I met my boyfriend in Nepal last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So. And he's Mexican, isn't he?
He's Mexican. We met on the Annapurna circuit, and he's now doing his masters in London. So it's sort of been a whirlwind year for, I suppose, both of us.
No, that's cool, because obviously my girlfriend's Mexican, so we have kind of, it's a bit of a strange one, isn't it? when we first had our chat, we were like, we both got Mexican partners. It's quite random. But and quite a random place to meet a Mexican, right? In the Himalayas. I mean, I'm not sure. Do many Mexicans kind of get over there?
I mean, it's not. I mean, there's so many Europeans and Australians and Israelis.
Yeah.
I think I've met, in all the time I've been there, I've probably only met a couple of other Mexicans. So yeah. It's not loads of people.
Yeah.
But so cool traveling around a country with someone who knows it as well. So.
Yeah. Have you been over to Mexico?
Yes, a really beautiful place.
You like it? Whereabouts did you go in Mexico?
We started in Mexico City and then went down to the Caribbean side.
Yeah.
And the Chichen Itza and the beaches and like Cozumel, snorkeling, and really cool. Yeah,
that's exactly pretty much where my girlfriend lives now, actually, Playa del Carmen, which is where you will have got the boat over to Cozumel, I guess.
Yeah, it's cool around there.
Yeah, it's pretty nice, isn't it? I need to stop talking about it now because it's making me jealous and want to go. Just going back to the programme here, my next question is music important to you while you're outdoors on your hikes and activities, jogging and things, or are you more of a natural sounding person where you just like the sounds of the nature, the birds and all that kind of stuff?
I think both. I think when I run in England, I listen to audiobooks, but it's just really because I like to feel like I'm learning something. And whereas when I'm in the mountains, I like listening to the nature and then using music as a tool. So when it's like you're on a particular hard, long climb and you're exhausted, if you put some good songs on that you love,
it keeps you going.
Exactly, and it makes it so much easier if you're struggling. And there just will be times as well when you do feel like a little bit tired and like, oh my god, we've got 3 more days trekking to go, and then an hour later you're like, oh, this is the most amazing holiday I've ever been on. So it's again, it's like you're forced to ride those highs and lows without distracting yourself with whatever your normal distraction is. Yeah, I'm the same, actually. It depends on the situation. I mean, years ago, I used to always have music on. I'd always have to have my headphones in and have some kind of nice chill-out music or something. But the last few years, I've just really been enjoying just the sounds of nature, you know, just going out there without my headphones and just listening to what I can hear from the world. And I think that just adds to the whole... You know, like you were saying before about when you're hiking and stuff, and sometimes you come up with ideas or thoughts or solutions to things, don't you? You know, when you've got nothing else to focus on but, you know, a mountain. Definitely. I think though that what is quite nice about trekking is that if you do go with a group of people, the conversation comes naturally because you're either enjoying the view or you have something of value you want to say, and then it kind of sparks a very natural conversation. So there's not a pressure to be talking all the time. Yeah. But it kind of ebbs and flows, and likewise when you want your peace and when you want your music, it's all mixed really for me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's something I've never done as a point-to-point trek. I've done a lot of hiking, you know, day hikes and stuff, but I've never done a point-to-point. So I guess I guess you have your moments, don't you, where you'll be with someone where you're chatting and stuff, and then you might have other times where you're on your own, I guess, just have it in your own mind and your own thoughts and just getting on with it.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's something I definitely need to do. So would you have a story of gratitude for us today? Is there been a moment in your life where you've kind of felt really grateful for the most simple things in life? I'm kind of guessing I know where you would have been at this time if you do.
Yeah.
But do you have you got a little story for us?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose just because I had a very low point 5 years ago and I really just didn't really know what to do with my life. I felt very directionless in many ways and very out of control. And so, you know, yes, I took on that holistic training, but I really just got to the mountains, and then that sense of like, when I was out there and that walking and just feeling so at peace, feeling so unjudged, feeling that it's just the beauty of these mountains that we get to walk and see how amazing the earth is and the way it's carved. And it's really just one of those things that you kind of have to experience. Like you turn a corner on a trek and you see a new mountain range, and you're kind of in that moment grounded into the position you are in. And I think it just makes me, I suppose, on a sort of more darker level, in those really sort of, when I've had those dark times, like knowing that there is a solution, and it's not a silver bullet fix, but it will give you that breathing space to get your head back and then kind of recalibrate on what you need to do.
Yeah.
And just so grateful that I've discovered these mountains, and that also with something like the Annapurna circuit trek, you don't need to go with other people. So if you're on a real shoestring budget, you can just go out there and you'll meet your friends that you'll have for the next 2 weeks on the bus, and then you'll leave feeling like a family because you've like had one of the most incredible experiences together, and you can get by on $20 a day or something.
Yeah, it's amazing. Sounds amazing. And like you say, I guess they're friends for life as well, aren't they? I mean, the beauty of that is as well, you know you're going to be meeting like-minded people. It's only certain people that are going to go and do that, isn't there? And
Exactly.
I mean, obviously from different walks of life, different careers, different interests, different hobbies, but the outdoors, there's always, if you're into the outdoors, you've always got a connection with someone, haven't you, basically,
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I'm quite into fitness, and I'm definitely into trekking in the outdoors. So, I met my partner, obviously, last year in the pool. And I suppose two things that would I don't think I could be with someone who wasn't into those things.
Yeah.
And so, filters
exactly.
people through, I suppose, slightly.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's nearly the end of the show, actually. There's just one section at the end, which we call Turn the Table, and that's when the guest gets to ask me a question. So I don't know if you have a question you'd like to ask me today. You don't have to, but if you do, go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to ask you, did you have a point in your life when you were struggling, and how did your meditation, whatever that is, help you in that time?
Yeah, I guess I've had a few little dark moments in my life, I suppose. The one that popped straight into my mind then was actually when my mum had a stroke. So that was about 10 years ago now. But a relationship of mine broke down on the day after my mum had a stroke. So it was kind of like a double whammy. And I was living in a city where I didn't really have any friends, so to speak. I was working there, but all of my friends were with my ex-girlfriend's friends. And once we kind of split up, I was kind of on my own. And then that happened to my mum, who I was away from. I was about an hour and a half drive, from where she was. So I was having to go back and forth every day to kind of see her in hospital and stuff. And my meditation was the mountains, was hiking, was walking, cycling also. I love cycling. So at the moment I was living in Chester, and so you've got all of the Cheshire countryside there. It's beautiful, so it's great for cycling. It's quite flat, and so you can just kind of go for miles and get lost in all the little country lanes and old castles, and just it's very historical around there. So I just made a point of getting out every day if possible to maintain my peaceful mind, or just try and cope with things.
Yeah.
That was a pretty difficult time, but if I'd have just sat indoors and done nothing about it and watched TV and dwell on it, I don't think I would. I don't know what would have happened. So that's definitely was a testing time for me, and the outdoors had absolutely 100% helped me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've all got to figure out what that is, because I mean, Buddhism teaches that suffering is inevitable. Like, we all suffer, so we all might have different tools to manage it, but knowing what those tools are so important when life gets challenging and throws us sad times.
Exactly, yeah. And years back as well, I mean, to a point, I'm a little bit like this now, I guess, if I'm to be honest, but I did find it hard speaking to people about my troubles and my worries. I used to just keep them to myself and, deal with them myself and go home by myself, think about things by myself. But I'd say the last 2 or 3 years, I've kind of opened up to a couple of friends, you know, and do discuss my kind of problems and issues. And I do find that helps as well, you know, is talking about your problems to people, isn't it, and sharing it. And because sometimes we feel a little bit embarrassed, don't we, about our problems, or embarrassed about moaning about certain things. But if something's getting to you and it's that bad, you need to reach out to someone and talk.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's what's quite good about, I would say more so in the last 5 years, people like mental health, people are more like open about discussing it. Like now buying a self-help book like The Power of Now, which might not even be classified as a self-help book, but before it would have been so embarrassing to be seen to do something like that. Whereas now it's like, we all struggle and asking for help is such an important part of it. So someone else being vulnerable gives that other person an opportunity to be vulnerable back. So it's really just opening a space for a deeper connection.
Definitely. And I think if you've been through a hard time as well, you kind of, you understand how it feels to have gone through a hard time, don't you? You know, so you don't want other people to kind of keep things to themselves. You want to be able to help them and you know, rather than just staying quiet and trying to deal with it themselves.
Definitely. I think that's what's so lovely about your podcast, is you're looking for people to share what they use to find more healing. Yeah. And, you know, everyone has different tips and tricks. And no one trick is right for everyone. So hearing a bit from everyone is really helpful for people listening, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the idea of them, really, is to give people ideas of activities and hobbies to do, but also, just to kind of, help people along and reassure them that, you know, there's other people out there that have gone through tough times and they've used these like ways of dealing with it themselves and it's worked for them. So it's good for you to share them stories and for other people to hear them, isn't it? Yeah. It could work for them, you know? Yeah, exactly. So cool. Well, that's it. Bella, thank you very much for joining me today. It's been great speaking to you. No, thanks, Guy. Thanks for having me. And I'm gonna to the listeners, I'm gonna put all of the links and stuff to Bella's websites and all of that jazz. I'll have them in the show notes. So if you want to check out Bella and what she's up to and see what she's doing with the Nepal and her new Summer Cecil project, then check out the links in the show notes. But again, thank you very much, Bella, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon, hopefully. Yeah, and thank you, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care, Bella. Bye. Bye. Take care. Well, there we go. What a lovely little chat. Another inspiring story of how someone has turned their life around by using the power of nature. Through using hiking as her meditation, Bella shed lots of weight, started living a much healthier lifestyle, visited some amazing places in the world and made some amazing friends, as well as gaining herself a Mexican boyfriend along the way. As I mentioned before, I'll be listing all of Bella's links to her various platforms and ventures in the show notes. After the show, she told me to let you know that she's more than happy to help anyone with an eating disorder and would love to guide you with the recovery community that helped her during her battle. How kind is that? I'll leave her contact details in the show notes also. Bella's come a long way since her dark time a few years ago, and by using the power of the outdoors, by using it as your meditation, you could do exactly the same. Thank you once again for tuning in. If you want to join us over on Facebook and Instagram, then search for My Meditation Podcast. I'll leave the links to both in the show notes, as well as the link to the official My Meditation Podcast channel, which you're more than welcome to subscribe to. The Facebook and Instagram page offer positive, inspiring and light-hearted quotes, photos and videos designed to bring a little happiness into your life. If you found any value from this podcast, I'd highly appreciate it if you could rate it and review it. And if you're feeling extra passionate, then please feel free to share it with the world and spread the word. It all helps the channel grow, which in turn means we can reach more people, which means helping more people. These podcasts are getting released every fortnight, so I hope you can join us for the next, and who knows, it could be about an interesting hobby or activity that could possibly be a life changer for you. Until then, take care and have fun, folks. Peace.